Hi, I'm Ethan. I love muzzleloading, and today I want to show you my beginner 18th century camping, trekking, shooting kit. Before we get started, I want to say that I'm continuing research on this. There's going to be a few things that I know aren't going to be right. Right off the bat, I can tell you that my beard, my glasses, and my short haircut here aren't necessarily correct for the late 18th and early 19th centuries. It's something I'm continuing to work on, and there's going to be some equipment throughout this video that isn't exactly right. It's probably some Farby reenactorisms here and there, but I'm working on making this as accurate as I can. That being said, if you know more about this than I do, please let me know in the comments. That helps everybody know and find more resources to learn from, and it helps us grow as a community. Running head to toe here, we have probably the first Farby reenactorism of the video. This is my hat. It's just a brown hat blank that I'm working on finishing up. So this is just a plain brown, and it's argued, I've been reading, that brown hats weren't necessarily popular or even existing in the time period. More often than not, you're going to have a black hat. That's something I'm working on picking up this summer. This is just a flat brimmed hat. This is the kind of thing you can pick up from like Townsend's or Sampson Historical. And then to finish out this hat, I'm seeing people adding in kind of a headband in here out of cotton or linen, and then there's usually a trim applied to the edge of the hat, and the feathers aren't necessarily historically accurate either. Some of this stuff throughout here is a carryover from my younger days, being outfitted kind of just as we go to events here and there. So we're working on continuing to improve that here. Coming down to my glasses, these are some brass round frames that I picked up actually from Zenny Optical. They aren't exactly historically correct. They're a little bit larger than the original examples that I've seen, but I'm really pleased with how close they do look. They're much better than my typical kind of shop teacher glasses that I'm normally wearing. Coming down from there, I have a dyed cravat or handkerchief kind of thing around my neck, and I'm wearing this hunting coat. And this is a really common style from about the 1750s up into the late 1700s. This comes from Cobb Creek Merchants. I think this is kind of her olive drab color. This is a linen fabric coat, so the linen part is accurate. You'll notice that a lot of my color choices here are really balanced with the environment that I live in, that you can see behind me. Actually, when I was setting up for this video, I had my father come by, and he said he couldn't really see me from a distance, which was kind of neat. I'm not really going for a persona that is needing to blend in necessarily into the environment, but it's kind of something that's always on my mind as I'm building and getting stuff around. So although my colors are very dark, and I'm kind of feeling that on this warm summer day, traditionally you could see a lot of different bright colors in 18th century apparel. So you can see my waistcoat underneath my hunting coat is kind of this purple. I don't know if this is wool or linen, with some gray pinstripes in it with small pewter buttons. Very common for the period. You'll see a lot of times at events people are wearing their shirt, which I have just kind of this used to be red and white and has since kind of dyed itself over the years. Shirt underneath everything, and commonly you'll see people with their shirt and their waistcoat. As research continues in this, we're starting to see that jackets and coats like this hunting coat were very common even on warm days, which is why you see me trying to wear it today. It's kind of a cultural norm that we're seeing in paintings and literature from the time period, and something that a lot of contemporary living historians and reenactors are trying to carry through into their modern representations. Underneath my waistcoat here, my knickers are buttoned up at the top. You'll notice that I'm not wearing a belt. These are tied and cinched in the back to kind of have a perfect fit with my body, and I will say that's really nice depending on what time of year it is. If I need to have some layers underneath my clothing, I can stretch these out a little bit, or if I'm just eating a lot at camp, I can fill these out a little bit and fit in them with a few extra pounds here and there. You'll notice I'm not wearing any socks today, kind of combating the heat a little bit, and I also have not shown here are a set of leather buckskin leggings, which you'll see very common, not necessarily for your typical colonial person or townsperson, but for somebody maybe out on a hunt or in the homestead. I was actually reading an article this week about an original journal documentation of I think it was a British person coming over, and they documented the linen wraps they put around their legs to combat the bugs and mosquitoes. Around this part of the country here in Indiana, kind of the Midwest region, the buckskin or leather leggings are super common, regardless of where you're at, just to help you with the ticks and the chiggers and just the general landscape of briars and poison ivy that we have. So it was neat to see some original source material about non-legging leg wraps to fight the bugs and things. It's something I'm kind of holding on to as we're in the thicket of insect season here in northern Indiana. On my feet, I'm wearing a pair of contemporary made Center C moccasins. These are by Poppin' Mocks, kind of a staple of the NMLRA national events. I think they've outfitted just about every living historian that comes through Friendship for many, many years now. These are really comfortable. They have a thick pig skin sole on them, so I'm not worried about rocks or thorns really when I'm out here in my home woods. Not exactly perfectly accurate, but they are one of the things that kind of passes for me at this time. I've been reading Nathaniel Kobuck's articles on the original made moccasins and footwear of people. So really common for a townsperson, you're going to see just the colonial buckle shoes, and even people going out for long extended periods of time on a trek or a hunt, you'll see them wearing those shoes as well, despite how uncomfortable they are to the modern foot, which I think is neat. You kind of get into, do I want to be comfortable in modern times, or do I want to represent the time period? And that's kind of a balance that a lot of us are trying to strike all the time. Really, as far as accuracy and accurate portrayal goes, I'm trying to be better, but this is just kind of a snapshot of where I'm at this time. Now, I'm not embarrassed at all about this kit, except for maybe my hat really needs some work as I continue to do research. But I feel really comfortable in the equipment and the clothing that I have and I'm wearing in front of you now to go out to an event or a camp and hang out and have a good time. This is really standard colonial townsperson, unimportant person, I'll say, as far as culturally goes. Just kind of your normal townsperson outfit. This is going to be kind of a standard set that you're going to see across the board for somebody portraying a more normal person. As I continue my research here, I'm really not trying to portray a long hunter or a market hunter. It doesn't really fit my personality really, going out and hunting for a living. I'm trying to take some of what I do in real life in my day job and apply it to the historic context so I can understand both what I'm doing today and what was done before the modern era in the same skill set. So as I'm continuing going into kind of level 3, I'm going to call it, this being kind of level 2 setup here on my clothing, I'm going to try to understand the role and the job of a surveyor in the late 18th and early 19th century. So I've been researching a lot of surveying or drafting tools and understanding the role of an artist or a naturalist on these surveying expeditions. We got to think about how neat it could be to attend or be a part of the world when it was, you know, a trackless forest, as Mark Baker put it. You had artists and surveyors on these expeditions, not necessarily the leaders really or anything, but they were there and making notes and recording this stuff. And I kind of think that's relevant to what I'm doing with the channel and with the website, trying to record and document some of contemporary muzzleloading culture. So I'm trying to apply a historical sense to that as I'm going back and forth with this stuff. Just like I did with the clothing that I'm wearing, I want to take you through some of the camping, trekking, or survival equipment here in front of me so that you can see some of the stuff I've gotten around and why I'm carrying it and how it can relate to the historic job or persona that I'm trying to further research and develop. This isn't going to talk about my shooting equipment at all. This is just kind of what is on my back if I'm going out to a camp or a trek or a shoot or something and I'm going pure 18th century. What you don't see here is going to be my canvas tent or my wool blanket. This is what I'm carrying on my back. I think to carry that kind of equipment, that stuff would be on the back of a horse or a wagon. So first, I want to say, as I'm drinking it here, I have my copper canteen. This is the kidney style canteen. Historically, I'm reading and finding and being told that typically these were made out of tin and not necessarily copper. We don't have a lot of examples of the copper canteen for the late 18th century, but that's what I have at the moment and that's what I'm carrying. This is full of water and I've been drinking out of this canteen for about 10 years, I think, as long as I've had it and kept it clean. It's worked really well. Jumping to my pack, you'll see a couple different things here. The pack itself is a contemporary made pack. I'm not sure about its historic accuracy with the leather that it's made out of, but it is patterned off of the British packs seen in the Revolutionary War in the late 18th century. I believe that's a pretty good representation or copy of that, but like I said, it is stitched together out of leather instead of linen. You'll see here that it's attached to this beautiful wood frame. I'm a real big fan of this frame. I'm still working on finding the historic accuracy of it, but you can see here it's pinned together at each of these joints, and it's really comfortable to carry. There's some homespun straps that we've attached to it here, and make it really nice to carry. It gives it a little bit more structure than I see in some of the really traditional just packs. So opening it up here, we have a buckle and a strap at the center bottom. I also have a couple ties here on either side. And right when I open this up, I have my buck saw in here. Now this is really handy and really period. I'll open it up here for you. This is just a really ancient designed folding saw. So there's my little sleeve for it. I flip it out like here. I have my jute cord here. And then I can set the tension on the blade with this here, just like if you were building a fence. This is made out of cherry, and it does have a contemporary or modern made saw blade here. So you can see in just a few seconds, I have a functional saw that I can take into camp and cut up some trees or brush really quickly, really quietly for a shelter or clear a path if I needed to out of something. This was made by my father, so it's kind of a family heirloom now for me, but I do enjoy carrying it with me. It gives me a little extra capability than you see a lot of times in period kit, but it's still, you know, a documented design, really early design, the kind of thing that somebody could carry and clean up, you know, some brush or some trees. From here, I have two more quick access items. This is a contemporary made homespun knife. As you can see there, really kind of an ugly looking knife, kind of in that, you know, contemporary interest in the fringes of society at the time. We've got an antler handle here and a pretty large blade. Not a super traditional, or, you know, there are knives documented that look very similar to this knife here, and there's a lot of contemporary versions of a knife like this made. But more commonly, you'll see later, you'd have an imported folding knife, which would be carried in a pocket. This is just kind of my backup larger knife, you know, as far as story goes, maybe for skinning or cutting meat at the table. Out in the woods. I just like this knife. It holds well, it has a good look, and it's comes from a friend, so I'm always pleased to have something like this in my kit. And I have it right here as I open up the kit so I can get to it very quickly. You'll notice with the saw, the knife, and the hatchet here, they're all some of the first things I can access when I open up the kit so that I have what I need to make camp or make a fire really quickly. This is a contemporary made cast head with a hickory handled hatchet. This is a very common size and profile for an 18th century hatchet or a colonial era hatchet. A lot of times we think about the tomahawk being used, but really when we're coming into the English or the white European settlers in the States, this is the kind of thing that we see carried. Traditionally, probably this would have been forged, though I can't speak on that. I don't have much authority on that. But this is the little hatchet that I have. You can see it's really small. I mean, I am not going to be cleaving heads with this. This is a tool. I have a hammer pole here on the back so that I can, you know, drive my knife into something if I need to, drive a tent stake, you know, that kind of thing. Just a real utilitarian tool, but it's simple and small in its elegance, which I really enjoy about this little hatchet. You can find these just about everywhere. A lot of times you can find the cast heads easier than you can them finished out. And it's not too hard to make a handle out of hickory or oak if you have access to some wood. Also right here in my center of my bag is my fire kit. In here I have tinder and a striker, several flints, and some char cloth, really standard stuff. I like having it right here at the center front so I can have quick access to it. In theory, if I need to build a fire fast, I can get to it really quickly. Also inside that pocket, I have a little compass. This is not an ultra period correct compass. Closed up, it looks a little bit better than it does opened up. This just, you know, kind of standard for your kit. The kind of stuff that we carry now in our camping and hiking equipment, you're going to see carried over historically in the 18th. On this other side here, I have a couple modern things that are really just good to have. I don't really want to get stuck out without them. And that's going to be water purification. So this is one of those little squeeze Sawyer filters or life water filters. You can pick these up, just kind of a quick and easy backup or emergency water source. I also have some water purification tablets here that make it easy to make sure that I have clean water no matter what. That's kind of the sad thing really about the modern age, is I can't go out into a stream and boil it and drink it and know that it's safe. So I want to make sure that I always have, although it's definitely not period for the time, I want to make sure that I have a way to make clean water. So you can see this British pattern or English pattern bag is kind of divided into three sections. We have our center, kind of quick access area as I'm calling it. And then we have our top flap here. And in here I have a couple other things. I have some extra tinder to start a fire. I also have a modern lighter in here, just in case. This is a thick, heavy plastic bag. Some pink salt came in it that I like. You know, this is just some extra backup. Just in case my bag gets soaked, I know I have some dry tinder in here. And you never know, sometimes you can be at a match and there's a part where they dunk your whole kit in water and you have to try to start a fire. So, it's this kind of thing to be aware of. And then here I have a very small personal folding skillet. This is also something that I've been fortunate enough to make with my father. It measures about 6 inches across. It's a really light single person skillet for cooking something over the fire. You're not going to see a lot of iron work and a lot of iron equipment in original gear. The folding grills and things you see on military campaign, but as far as like tripods and your common person setup goes, I'm not finding a lot of resources that point to a lot of heavy iron use, mainly because it's heavy and it's expensive for the time. Here is a little bag that I have set up with an extra candle. It's an old beeswax candle. I also have a round ball mold. I have some ice cleats in here. These are some period ice cleats. Real simple sheet iron or steel with some points there I can attach to my moccasins if I'm out on slick terrain. And I have a bar of soap to help keep clean while out in the woods. Just cleaning my hands while I'm fixing a meal. That's the kind of thing that can become pretty important. This I have not found or really looked for historical documentation on. This comes from the Ted Cash Manufacturing Company. This is a little fold-out lantern. I just thought was too neat not to try out. So we have a couple reflecting panels here, and these doors open up to reveal that candle. It's the kind of thing I can open up just one and light my candle and have a little light and keep it just a little light to kind of conceal my location if I need to. But it's just a neat little compact candle deal. Now I do have on this other side a better documented, more traditional version of this. And that's this box here. So here I have a couple candles in there. It's good to have a couple things, every now and then. But this I can set up on my table or on a rock and have a little light. And I can open and close this as I need to allow more light in or out. And these panes or panels here act as reflectors you know, to broadcast that light or conceal it from this angle. So that's a more period documented, you know, a little simpler version of this same lantern here. That's all I had over here, so I'm going to jump to the other side here. I have a journal. This is a simple leather-bound journal with some really appropriate, based on my research, this is cold press watercolor paper, but it's made in a factory or in a facility that's been making paper since the early 1800s. So it's about as close as you can get in modern produced paper to a paper of the time period. You'll notice I don't have it stained with tea or anything to make it look old. This is a new journal that I've got just kind of to start fresh with this kit, so you don't see any writing in there. Here's just an empty tin I'm carrying around. Don't really know what I'm going to do with it yet, but I thought having a container might be good. These here are the knife and fork set I picked up at the NMLRA spring shoot. Traditional profiles, it's a 4-tine, so this is going to be maybe a higher class or a later era fork here, but the knife matches pretty well for the time period. We have some bone handles with some poured pewter extensions there. It's kind of a neat thing to have in the kit. I've been looking for a period eating kit, and that's what I found. The leather sheath for it is a little bulky, so I might streamline that down the road. But that's what I have as far as utensils go. Here's my really period, really appropriate folding pocket knife. It has wood panels here and a poured kind of end cap here with our knife blade. You really see these just being prolific in the time period. A lot of these were made in France, where you see a lot of arms and other equipment and tools and cutlery being made. These were just imported by the crateful, and this is the kind of thing that just about everybody would have and carry in their pocket. In contrast to kind of how we think of it, I think today, the big hog knife here, the hog's leg. Really neat design, not knocking it at all or anybody who enjoys it or carries it. I love them too. Have more than I'm ever going to use. But really this is the kind of thing that I'm going to begin keeping in the pocket of my coat that you see here, just as my 18th century pocket knife. So it folds out. It doesn't lock or anything, but it holds in place with that spring, and it folds back up to that compact shape. Here I have a little bit more of a traditional 18th century compass. This opens up, and I thought it'd be fun to put a piece of recreation money from the time period in there, just as kind of a backup coin if I needed it in my travels. This is that brass compass. It also has a sundial set up on here, and it has some engraving on the inside to help me tell time and understand a little bit of the environment and where the sun is at, or maybe even where the stars are at. This is based on some original examples, but I'm not going to say that it's absolutely accurate. The brass container is nice. There's some space for some engraving here if I wanted to make it a little more personal. But I have that in there as well as kind of a backup to the silver that I showed you earlier. Now, my cooking pot right now is a little controversial in the space. So this is a contemporary made corn boiler. I haven't looked into it enough to understand the time period where this particular design comes from. For the late 18th century, you're going to see a small brass or plated kettle being used a lot, and I'm working on acquiring one as my budget allows here. But this is the kind of thing that you'll see a lot of people carrying in the contemporary space, because it gives you a lid, it gives you a pot to cook in, it gives you a nice handle that you can drink from. So I can bring in some rice, some meat, and I can cook all of that and maybe some vegetables in here, and I can eat it out of this all-in-one utensil. It makes it very useful on the trail. Just while I'm carrying this inside, I have a small horn cup. This is my Ron Vale. I picked this up at the Kalamazoo Living History Show in 2022. This is just a small lightweight cup that I can carry to drink from if I had a ration of mead or whiskey or something, or I can drink my water if I want to be fancy and pour it out of my canteen into this to drink from. Really period, really common thing. We see horn being considered kind of the plastic of the age, and so having a small horn cup like this is light, does not take up a lot of space, and is really useful when I'm out and about. Then I have a contemporary made backup fork and spoon here. I don't think this is very period, but it kind of fits with everything. So it's just a folding spoon and fork combo here. You see it talked about a lot in modern camping or survival or whatever you want to call it. Situations having a backup fork or spoon, because you never want to be without one if you need to eat or when you need to eat. So I like to carry that one. It's nice and light, fits in my pot here, and is easily carried. So this is really just, again, a snapshot of the equipment and the gear that I have for summer 2022. This is going to continue to evolve, and it's probably going to evolve over the entirety of my lifetime, as I have a lot of interest in this. I wanted to show you for a couple of reasons. One, to have that snapshot to show you where I'm at and tell you a little bit about where I want to go with it, but then also to show you how much room I still have to go with it. None of this is perfect, and it's not going to be, but it's fun to kind of go along the research and the understanding journey of what was carried and what was used. So I hope, if nothing else, this interests you a little bit and maybe inspires you to get out and start your own journey with this stuff. Start researching it a little bit, start understanding it a little bit. Even if you don't have the perfect equipment or the perfect gear for the time period, you can get out and enjoy doing this.